Das ist super, darum gerade hier, aber nicht vorgestern. Konnte ich mal auch nicht ausspielen. Ich war als Center. Ich wollte doch gerne das anfangen.
Der müsste frei bleiben. Sorry. Wir können auch anders machen. So, ja. Wir könnten. Das war so die
Sonst höher. Oder rutscht noch ein bisschen weiter nach.
Ja, mittlerweile sieht das.
So, Martin.
Die auf der Pressekonferenz immer spontan normalerweise sind wir dann ist das hier ausreichend. Ja, genau. Genau.
I think so. Yeah, it's a very good message. Yeah. Also du kannst keine Fotos machen.
Ich kann nur bleiben. Ja, weil die will es dann unbedingt brauchen. Ja.
Bonjour, hello und guten Morgen. We're gonna speak English. I hope that's okay for everyone because on the stage not everyone speaks German. I saw on the list that there are a lot of German-speaking journalists, but I already noticed that not everyone is speaking German. So I hope you're fine if we continue in in English. As you see, the stage has changed a bit. Last month Stefan regrets he can't be here because someone of his close family passed away, so we had to switch a bit. And Lea Krüger, she's a German athlete, and she's taking over the moderation, so she will ask the questions today to us. And I take over for Dr. Lars Mortziefer. Let me introduce the stage as well. So we have Michael Čepić here from NADA Austria, he's the CEO at NADA Austria. We have Benjamin Cohen here from ITA, the International Testing Agency, and we have Jérémy Roubin here from the Agence Française de Lutte de Contrôle, so that's the French Anti-Doping Agency. And now I'm handing over to Lea Krüger.
Bonjour, also from my side. I'm very happy to be in Paris for the Olympic Games, and also that I have the possibility today to take a moderation from an athlete point of view in this topic, because the anti-doping work, it's for the athletes at least, and so I'm happy that I can also maybe ask some questions. And I will directly start with one first question to Benjamin. To harmonize the anti-doping work before the games, the ITA leads a so-called pre-games testing expert group since Tokyo 2021 that includes different recommendations for the anti-doping organizations worldwide. So the question is, what was the main focus on the recommendations for Paris, especially looking at the collaboration with natives and the specific countries represented here in the panel? And the question continued, there's a second part. Sorry, it's a long one. And could you shortly summarize the outcome and takeaways, please?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me. Indeed, the pre-games program is aimed at ensuring that all the athletes who qualify to the Olympic Games will have been subject to proper monitoring and proper testing. And so this is very, very important to ensure a level playing field here in Paris at the Olympic Games. As you can imagine, starting a program that we start usually 1 year before the Olympic Games, it's very difficult to know which athletes will qualify. So I think that the first issue that the pre-games expert group had to solve is what is the list of athletes that we're talking about. I take this opportunity to inform you that the expert group is managed by the ITA, but is composed of different experts coming from different national agencies and international federations. And so for the first time we had the pleasure to have a representative of the German NADA in our expert group. So when we start the program, approximately a year before, we work with a list of potential participants, which is approximately 100,000 athletes who are likely to qualify. As you can imagine, this is way too big as a net to make sure that you can monitor everybody and test everybody. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is the access to the data. We work with a platform that is managed by WADA, and that is still very complex, I think, for all of us here doing anti-doping to really manage and access the data when we have so many athletes. What we do is once we have, I would say in January, we have approximately 50,000 athletes left on the 1st of January to work with. There's only 11,000 then taking part in Paris. What we do and what the expert group does is to make sure to assess the athletes, countries, delegations and disciplines which we believe are the most at risk, so that we can focus the resources on the disciplines that we feel are at risk, mostly from a physiological perspective. So the disciplines, obviously athletics, swimming, weightlifting, boxing will be more at risk than archery, sailing and sports with a less physiological demand. So we necessarily put our focus there, and then we do delegation risk assessment, and there are, as you know, delegations which have had more issues of doping in the past, maybe than Germany. I don't need to name some countries, you will know some. And so we also put our focus there. And then we do an individual risk assessment. So we look at every athlete and the number of tests that this athlete has had in the past. And if we see some gaps, as you said, we try to identify those gaps and issue testing recommendation to make sure that these athletes will have been properly tested. Obviously, the objective is to make sure that all the athletes going to the games are tested. And that's the objective, but some athletes will need to be tested more. On the second question, you ask about the outcomes and how to identify those gaps. I think what we're seeing, and ITA will obviously shortly after the games publish a full report that will be transparent for everyone to see. We see obviously that there are countries, there are delegations where the athletes are less tested than others. Obviously, I take the opportunity to congratulate the NADOs that are present, because the coverage of tests has been really excellent, in particular in Germany, since we're in a German house. The athletes are really well covered, really well tested, but we're seeing that in some other countries this is less the case, and so those gaps need to be identified, and we need to pass these numbers to the World Anti-Doping Agency. This is the global regulator. And they need then to assess with each country what needs to be done. I spoke to Mr. Sepic before. He's very involved in NADO relations and the work with some NADOs, and so he sees that some NADOs, some countries need a little push. They need more resources, they need to work better, they need to test more, and that is a compliance aspect that WADA needs to take up and work with these countries. The good news is that for the Olympic Games, I think it's important to remind everyone that 90% of the athletes here at the Games will have been tested at least once since 1st January. When we talk about high-risk disciplines and high-risk athletes, 95% of those athletes will have been tested before they reach Paris. So we're talking about a minority of athletes who would be, let's say, outside the system, not tested, not monitored, and I think that should bring comfort to the athlete community that the work is relatively well done by the national agencies and the international federations.
Thank you very much. It was a long question and a long answer, but it, yeah, thank you. I would like to pass to the second question I have now. It's to the three NADOs. I will first ask a question and then I will start from the bottom of the table. So the question would be, you ran the a national pre-games program with your national athletes. We already heard about the tests before from ITA as well, but they are made also in national programs in the NADOs. So could you explain, please, the pillars of the pre-games program and especially the main facts in this and the topic races, lighthouse projects, etc. in your country, and give an insight into the collaboration with the pre-games expert group you already heard about. Thank you. So, yeah, start please.
So, allow me first to thank my German colleagues for the invitation to this press conference, and also want to congratulate the French colleagues for a great start into these Olympics in Paris 2024. And on behalf of the National Anti-Doping Agency of Austria, I all want to welcome you to this press conference. And I will give you a short oversight of what the pre-game activities we did on a national level. But before I come to this, let me allow to put the general statement. I think the anti-doping community is in a challenging situation right now. You have all experienced developments in the last couple of months. I'm long enough in this business, and sometimes I think, or I got the feeling, we forget one thing. We are not here as organizations, we are not politicians, we are here for the benefit of the athletes. And I think we all should get the emotions out and should try to focus again on this primary goal, clean sport, clean athletes, and to provide a level playing field. The other issue, maybe there are some questions later on, crazy ideas. regarding future competitions. I don't even want to mention it as a sport, but they are out there, and so it is challenging. But there are also very good developments, at least from my point of view. Collaboration between national anti-doping agencies and the International Testing Agency, with which in the beginning, like every cooperation, had its ups and downs, but the development in this regard is great. It was a great preparation coming to the games with the International Testing Agency, and this is the important thing, I think it was basically very good development for the athletes and to provide a better level playing field that we had before. I mean, we are not at the end there, but it's a work in progress. Regarding the national activities, I would like to start with education, which is sometimes not mentioned so much. Every athlete, every Austrian coach, every support personnel has had to pass e-learning license before they were able to participate in the games. We had a couple of on-site organized meetings with the athletes, and as I said, sometimes education is not regarded as that important, but it was received by the athletes very well. They had a lot of questions, and what we tried to avoid in any case to 100% unintentional doping, and I think for this the education is a big part. Regarding the testing, Austria is here with I think the smallest team. We have 81 athletes here. We had, like everybody else, the problem that at the beginning of the year we had a long list of a couple of 400 athletes. All of these athletes were tested around about 550 samples that they had to provide, and from the athletes who participate now actually in Paris, the 81, there were 244 samples taken. We had like 180 urine samples and 64 blood samples. So on average, every Austrian athlete coming here to the games in Paris was tested 3 times. Together with the ITA, some of the athletes, according to the risk of their individual sports, they were tested up to 10 times and more. So there was a lot going on, and of course, one thing I want to add is the Austrian federal anti-doping law also allows us to work together with public authorities, and so that we had also some cases where there was investigation behind the athletes, behind the training stuff. But all of the Austrian athletes who are participating, they should be doing fine and clean. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. That was a nice insight of your work. Now I would like to pass to Jérémy. Please let us know about your work here in France. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to add a few things from my colleagues, because as you know, we have some rules, some processes. It's very important to have the same anti-doping program for all athletes, for every country. I think it's very important for us and for all the anti-doping community. So just to figure, maybe to illustrate what we did in France, it was of course a challenge for national anti-doping in France, because we know for the Olympic Games, when you host the Olympic Games, your delegation is bigger. So for us, we wanted to be ready for the Olympic Games in Paris. So first of all, we obtained financial support from the French government to really increase the number of samples collected every year. Just for last year and for this year, we have collected, and we are collecting 12,000 samples. It was the first year it was possible in France since the creation of the AFLD. So it was very important for us to show we are a part of a global anti-doping program, even in France. So maybe another figure, very important, and I am very happy to speak about anti-doping education, because I think it's really a part of the national anti-doping program. I'm explaining that because just a few days before the opening of the Olympic Games in France, we had to ban a very young athletes only for a non-intentional doping in the medical context. So I think it's very important to understand we have many cases about anti-doping, and education is really a part of the national program. And for the first time, the National Olympic Committee in France decided to add a condition for the athletes. It's to follow anti-doping educational program. So I think it was very important to explain anti-doping is a part of sport for high-level athletes. And I'm very happy to see a new perspective for the anti-doping in France. So 2 examples to show that's very important to us to connect anti-doping education, anti-doping education and anti-doping testing. And I think and hope it will be an heritage for the next Olympic Games and for the next year, because I think it was a booster for us to have Olympic Games at home, and I hope it will be really a path for the next Olympic Games.
Thank you, Jérémy. And I think that was a very important point you already said, that yeah, it's about us, about the athletes, and as you already mentioned, they're athletes, they just got sanctioned a couple of days before. I think I will coming back later to this point, but first of all, Eva, let us know about the work of now Germany.
Well, for us in Germany, the joint commitment for clean sport, yeah, is very essential to protect the clean athletes, actually. And I'm very proud that we're having this stage here with all the different experts in anti-doping. We got together today and can speak about the programs we have done. The exchange among the German-speaking communities, I think here in the room now, we are having an exchange actually almost every day, I can say. We exchange a lot in the German community. And then, as you have heard from Benjamin, we were part of the pre-games expert group that was headed by the ITA, and the group put together a lot of different recommendations for the countries to execute a pre-games testing program. On a national level, we focused on 2 pillars, and we have heard that before, that prevention was one very important part for the different NATOs, as well for us. So we educated the athletes that are here with different programs, with an e-learning program as well. We had webinars for the athletes to make sure that they know the rules that apply in Paris. As well, we're in contact with our athletes a lot, and we launched a campaign that is called Proud to be True, with very young athletes. Lili Stofasius, who is a skater, and she's here as well, and Regula Runge, she's a BMX driver. So to make sure that clean athletes are getting the support from us as well. We organized, looking at the control side, we organized for the 429 athletes that are here, 1,176 controls with 1,779 samples. And I saw on the slides of the ITA that was launched for the press conference that 1% is missing, but I saw that the slide was done on the 17th of July, so I think the 1% was on the 17th of July, because we still tested until the ITA took over on the 18th of July, so I think that's the 1% that's missing, just if someone saw that there's 1% missing of tests, but we couldn't find one athlete that wasn't tested of the German delegation. We as well have 44 reserve athletes, and we tested them as well with 103 controls all in all since January 2004. For us, it's as well important to not just look at the figures, but as well, so not only at the quantity, but as well at the quality of samples. So we stored a lot of the samples to make sure we can reanalyze them later on, and as well we evaluated them in the athlete's biological passport, and did additional analysis on the samples as well. Our exchange with athletes was very important in front of the games, and as everyone knows, and Michael Šebić already touched the topic, we had some broadcasting coming on And for us, it's very important to talk to the athletes about the topic. And of course, as you might know, we're the German anti-doping agency, and since it was a German broadcasting, of course, we received a lot of questions as well from the athletes, as well from the public. I call it a soup. I mean, we're sort of the anti-doping community, so we're in the soup as well. And of course, we get the questions too. And for us, it's very important. The first thing we did was to go to our athletes and talk to them, because we see that we're losing trust in the anti-doping system, and we have to work hard to get the trust back, especially with the athletes. And we're taking different measures to get the trust back, especially on an international level and with our national athletes. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Before I pass to the next question, I would ask you to please push a little bit your micros. Benjamin, yours is fine, but the others here too much. Thank you, because we cannot see your faces then when it's too high. So. Thank you. Thank you also, Eva, for answering the question. Yes, talking also about trust. First of all, I would like now to pass to Paris. Now we are here, Paris Olympic Games. And I have again a question to Benjamin. Could you please give a short insight in the anti-doping program during the Olympics and the cooperation with the NATOs during the Games? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So the program started with the opening, official program of Paris started with the opening of the village on the 18th of July. We plan to collect approximately 6,000 samples during these games. Samples will be collected out of competition and in competition. So out of competition includes the whole territory of France, but it can also be some samples are still collected abroad on some athletes traveling to France. And samples collected in competitions are collected at every venue. So the program is coordinated by the ITA, but we work in close cooperation with our colleagues from the French National Anti-Doping Agency and the organizing committee of the Paris 2024 Games. So Paris 2024 does the infrastructure, the logistics, the security. The French NATO is in charge of the workforce and the collection of samples, and IT is in charge of the coordination, the athlete biological passports, the therapeutic use exemptions, the intelligence and investigations that we may conduct as well with our French partners. So that's a little bit the program. We obviously work with all NATOs. If, for example, Michael would have some information about a member of the Austrian delegation, we would be in touch. We have the capabilities to test athletes, the same with the German NADA. So we work obviously more closely now with our French partners, but we can work with every colleague in the world.
Thank you. And that's a nice step to the next question now, actually, because cooperation with you in France. Jérémy, could you please tell us about the DCCC project, wherein you invited the NATOs to be part of? And could you give an insight at the work of the DCCC and the cooperation you have there? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the DCCC is an awful name for Doping Coordination Center. So in fact, it's a place in the Olympic Village where people coming from many NATOs or coming from anti-doping community in general are working to deliver anti-doping program for the Olympic Games. So it's DCCC is just that, but it's very important to understand it's crucial to have not maybe a perfect, but a better and the best anti-doping program for the Olympic Games. So yes, we knew when the local organization committee Paris 2024 began the discussion with the AFLD conversation to suggest a partnership with the local organization committee for the next games. We knew it was a big challenge for us because we are not able to deliver alone a global anti-doping program. So first question was how the other NATOs can help us for the next camps. And we decided to open the DCCC to other NATOs, including German NATO, And it was very important to us to host other people from all countries to support us for anti-doping program for the Olympic Games. So actually we have 12 colleagues from other countries in the DCCC with the ITA, of course. And I think it's maybe a new model for the next games, because it's the first time that the National Anti-Doping Organization is a part of the program of the Olympic Games. And I think it's a way to save energy, save money, and to share experience and information and good practice between anti-doping organizations. Because for us and for many colleagues from other NADOs, the Olympic Games must be a good way to enhance national anti-doping programs. So I think it's very important for us to open the DCC to other colleagues and to work together for the Olympic Games, not just on the paper but in practice. And I think it's a good illustration for that.
Yeah, thank you, Jérémy. Just a thought in my head, but probably also less strong NADOs could profit or to be part of the program to develop more. Probably that could be a good program also for the future. Thank you for the insights. And now I would like to ask Eva about what is NADA Germany's contribution during the Games.
Well, you have heard a bit about our contribution, but we're actually here in the house. We're having a booth here in the house to make sure that athletes can answer questions to us, and we're just here for the athletes and for the officials and to keep up the topic for the whole Games actually. And then, as you heard, I think it's a good system having the DCCCCC, so that's a Doping Control Coordination Center. And I think it's the first time we have seen it with the laboratories, that they're having the international experts here during the Games all the time. And it's the first time that the national anti-doping organizations are being asked to be part of the Games and helping the ITA to organize their missions. And we have one staff member here in the DCC who is actually organizing the doping control offices for the different missions the ITA is organizing. And I think it's great to having all the different experience here of the different NADOs. So I'm hoping to have the system for the future Games as well. Yeah, this is our contribution here.
Thank you, Eva. And now I have a last question on the international cooperation. It's up to you, Michael, now. You're part of the expert group of NADOs at the WADA. Could you give an insight of the joint work ahead of the Games in Paris, and that executed for the clean sport, looking at the IOs and education program and the involvement of NADOs in Paris, please? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And maybe I start with giving you a little bit of an overview of so that you can imagine how the work is done. In 2023, there were like 260,000 samples taken worldwide, 180,000 of them, roundabout, from NADOs. In education, the contribution of the NADOs is probably even higher. Up to the governance reform by WADA, or nevertheless, NADOs had no voice, or just a little voice in this community. And thanks to the governance reform, and this is important, both the athletes and the NADOs are now represented to elected group of representatives, where also the chair and the vice chair sit on the foundation board, so on the highest decision-making bodies of WADA. In preparation to the Games in Paris 2024, the main issue, and I'm coming back to what I said in my first remark, is to try to get the same level, the same quality of anti-doping work worldwide. We have a lot to do, and within this EAG Expert Advisory Group of NADOs, where 2 representatives of each Olympic region are represented. Our first step in preparation of the Olympic Games 2024 was to make sure as much as possible that the quality of anti-doping work is the same all over the world to the benefit of the athletes, which of course is not something you can achieve in 1 or 2 years, because you have regions, and I'm not only talking about regions in Africa or in Southeast Asia, but there is still a lot to do. Our goal was, in preparation of the games, to define NADO leaders in each region, so that you have an example, for example, where the quality of work is very high, let's say in South America is Argentina, and to make them a leader in their region, and to try to raise the level, the quality of anti-doping work in this region. Same, let's say, in Asia, where you have excellent agencies with Japan or South Korea, and they help or assist anti-doping organizations in their region in preparation to the games. It's not perfect yet, we know that, but I think we, and I hope Benjamin will confirm that, we hope to have raised the level of anti-doping work in preparation of the games.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to, as that was the last question on international level, but I also would like to take the possibility, if I'm here as an athlete, to also ask you some questions from an athlete's point of view now. And you were talking a lot about how important it is to have an equal level of the anti-doping system worldwide. And yeah, I think we all saw the broadcast in past weeks that the trust in this program on the same level, international level, is kind of missing now, what we saw there. And so I would like to know, so we, the athletes, we have the feelings that not all the athletes from our countries have the same level now in this anti-doping system, and also in the doping controls. And yeah, we heard about the groups. Sorry, I just have to check my marks first. So that's when I start just writing down and giving marks everywhere. You know, we heard about the analyze and the groups and the expert groups about to raise the same level, to reach the same level of equality. And my question now is, we still have the gaps. You have the groups now. You try to close these gaps and to make to bring more equality in the international anti-doping system. But so from my point now, it seems that the work with the NATOs and the ITA works pretty well now. So where are the gaps now? What we have to improve? Where we have to improve to reach a better international level of equality? And that's what I would like to ask you, Benjamin. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. I think it's the $1 million question. Huh? Yeah, I think
that's actually the question we as athletes have right now.
Exactly, and I think it's the right question, and I'm glad you ask it, because it keeps us on our toes, that we need to find solutions for the athlete community and make sure that you can have full trust in the system. By definition, working in international sports means that there are 206 countries, and when there are 206 countries, there are 200 ways of doing things, and so by nature, the work of different NADOs will be impacted by the resources they have, by the access to technology, by a number of things. And so how do we bridge those gaps is indeed by putting together this expert group that can identify them early enough and work with making those recommendations. So this expert group, for example, I mean, I don't want to name countries, but if they were seeing indeed very low level of testing of athletes who would end up competing against German athletes in a race, they would 6 months before say, be careful, your athletes are not tested, you need to test them. And we would go back 2 weeks after, have you tested them, have you not? And so if we continue to see these gaps, then there is only, we have to accept the system that there is today a regulator that needs to, under the code, apply the code and says you cannot be a signatory to the code anymore if you don't do the work. So this is the system in place. Of course, I understand athletes won't answer now. The games are now, and the system takes time. And that's maybe something that we need to review as a community, is that the standard for compliance, for a process of compliance for a country to be I would say, declared non-compliant, this takes time, and that may not solve, as you say, the concerns of the athletes that won't answer now. And so perhaps we need to find in the system the possibility to accelerate those compliance procedures so that if the NADOs and ITA see a gap, that immediately WADA can launch a process of non-compliance with the possibility, for example, for NADOs or ITA to step in and say, we're going to test in the country because there's no testing or because there's no work. So that there are solutions. Of course, anti-doping, needs also resources. An anti-doping test is very expensive. So if we start doing testing on every single athlete, as you say, non-intelligent testing, just for the numbers, that I think will not be the right solution. It is very expensive, it needs resources, and sometimes anti-doping is not on the top of the agenda, unless when there are issues, as we heard in the media recently, suddenly it comes up in the media and we find money, but otherwise then the money is still very difficult to find. So that's, I think, my answer. But to be honest, it's going in the right track. This pre-games program in Paris was the best we could ever implement. The monitoring is excellent. Now, I think it's a good time after Paris to look really where were the gaps and to say, okay, now we need solution to address them. Let's not go to Los Angeles or Milano with the same issues.
Thank you. Actually, that gives a little hope, and I'm very happy also that you told us about the DCC project, because it seems really that with these kind of projects we can probably also helping other NATOs to become stronger and having a better level. But I mean, yeah, you already mentioned the trust we lost is now, and we are in the games now. And yes, of course, we would like to have answers now. And so the last question actually is again on the three NATOs they're sitting here. So we heard about everything. Also, you told us, for example, about the young athletes. They were just they cannot precipitate now because they are suspended. And if we see this, and we saw the broadcasters and the news just before, it's not the same level now. So how do you manage to get the trust back from the athletes in your NATO? And I would like to start with you, Jérémy, if it's okay.
Yes, very hard question, because I think in the anti-doping community every day it's a question for anti-doping organization. We ask ourselves what is possible to enhance trust in the system, anti-doping system. I think it was said most important is to underline that one code, one anti-doping community, one team. I think it's very important to explain every anti-doping organization, share everyday information, practice, processes. It's very important to explain. It's not just national organization on the side, IT on the other side, and a gap between all of them. It's very important to understand every day we send information to the organization. We explain what we are doing. We are observing what it is done by other anti-doping organizations. I think it's not really well known, but it's very important to understand. For international sport, anti-doping organizations are really one team. And when we see something is not wrong, not correct, or can be surprising, we ask to another anti-doping organization, what is the problem? There is a problem, or we can support you. And it's very important to understand, for instance, for international competition, although not the Olympic Games or Paralympic Games, but international competition, we can help other anti-doping organizations before or during the competition. And I think it's very important to share good practice. We did it last year with the Jeu de la Francophonie in French. I don't know why I can translate it in English. Exactly. Because it's right.
Jeu Francophonie. I think it's everybody knows what you
Yes, absolutely. So in Kinshasa, in Africa, we did it. We many colleagues from the AFLD went to Kinshasa to help our colleagues to deliver anti-doping programs during the competition and to train DCOs, BCOs for the next games and for next year. So it's very important to have concrete operational cooperation. I think it's true today to declare that we are one team with the same process and the same code. And I think it's important to be convinced of that. And I know there is a difference between athletes who once answer no, and sometimes years to enhance anti-doping program, to deliver new educational program, for instance. I understand the frustration, if I can say. But yes, it's a part of our job, and I would like to say we work for athletes, we work for clean athletes. It's something we say it every day, but it's very important for us to say it, because I think it's our goal, really.
Thank you. I mean, yes, the anti-doping work it's a way. It's not I say it's a marathon, not a sprint in Germany. So yes, I know it, and I'm happy to hear that there are a lot of programs you already mentioned, and also transparency. I think that's one of the most important points for us. Michael, could you please tell us how would you gain the trust of the athletes back?
Thank you, Leah, for the question. I think like in every other area of life, it's not specific to sports, trust is mostly a thing of perception, so how you perceive things. And I think the developments of the last couple of months were not really perfect to increase the trust of the athletes into the system. But I go back to what Jérémy said. There are no two sides in clean sport. There is only one side, and we have all to be on the same side. You as an athlete, Leah, you know what it takes to give you the whereabouts, to get tested, and we had a lot of talk, of course, with Austrian athletes. Okay, they don't necessarily love it to be waked up like 6 o'clock in the morning and they have their time slot, but they're okay with it. What really matters to them, and what really, I would even say, makes them angry, is that the level, the quality is not the same everywhere. And if you are in the countries who are represented here, and Benjamin will also confirm that in most of the countries, you as a 24 or 26-year-old athlete, you are under the code from if you're a high-performance athlete, from 16 to 17. So 10 years of sending your whereabouts, a time slot, whatever. And unfortunately, and this is what the athletes really do not understand, that there are countries where you're not under the code, where you may be under the code for 1 year, 2 years, and this is not a level playing field. And I can talk for another couple of minutes about this, but talk wouldn't change much. We have to work, and this to the benefit of the athletes.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a good last sentence. We have to work. So, Eva,
The last one.
You're the last one.
Yeah, I see two layers in this question. Actually, I see the national level and the international level. On a national level, we are the responsible organization to make sure that the code is applied, and that we are compliant with the code, and that we make sure that we're having the partners on board, that we're having the financial support, that we're having the federations that are carrying out the anti-doping work like the code is demanding. And of course, we're working together with the athletes, and I already said the athletes, they just came to us, and of course us, because of the broadcasting, you were the first one actually just calling and saying what's going on there. And it's our task to be the ones answering these questions in Germany. So that's the national level. So it's our task to make sure that the code is, that we are complying with the code on a national level. And I see the international level as well, and I think our task there is the cooperation with the other national anti-doping agencies and the doping communities, as well with INADO, and to make sure that everyone complies to the code, and that we're demanding, and that not only our country is complying with the code, that France is complying with the code, that Austria is complying with the code, but all the other countries are as well complying with the code. And we are seeing you in the broadcasting saying we have to ask if it's still proportional. And these are questions we have to ask ourselves. Is it still proportional? Can we change the system? Can we develop the system even further? There's the DBS outside. So we have to ask ourselves, is it the right system right now? Or do we have to make changes? Do we have to look at the code? Which changes can we make there to make sure that everyone is complying to the code?
Thank you, Eva. Thank you all for your answers so far. That was so actually the last question from my side, and I would like to open the stage now up to you as well. Please, if you have any questions, raise your hand and also give a short introduction from which media you're coming from, and then I will take you. So, we have also microphones coming right now.
Sebastian Krause, ARD. I have two, three questions to Benjamin Cohn. First, did I understand it right that only 90% of athletes were tested here, and that there are still around 10% of the athletes that weren't tested at all in the months before the Olympic Games? And then about the recommendations, can you say how many recommendations did the expert group make? And what is the system worth if those recommendations were too late? Because athletes could dope only in the preparation a few months ago, and then it could be too late to test them. And what is the system worth if those recommendations or the gaps, lack of testing, have no immediate consequences for the nations and others, for the athlete?
Thank you. So that's 4 questions. No, but I'm glad. I think it's one question somehow. It's the nature of the pre-games effort. As you say, I think 10% of athletes not tested. It doesn't mean they have never been tested. It means that we observe that they haven't been tested from the 1st of January until the games, which is an issue. Now, within those 10%, the vast majority, approximately 70% of those 10%, are coming from medium or low risk sport. So that means this is not where the focus should be placed by our agencies, because if we have only resources, we want to test the top high risk disciplines, and that's, I think it explains why if you have an athlete that does sailing and is anticipated by Michael, for example, to reach 25 in the classification with no medal possibility, that is maybe not where you want to put your resources, and that explains the 10%. It doesn't mean it's great. It means that this is where you put your money and the resources of your agency. But of course, we want everyone to be tested. I think it's a clear message for the athlete community. They are requesting that, and that is important. Now, the expert group has classified all the disciplines in 3 risks: high risk, medium risk, low risk. For high risk disciplines, the recommendations was a minimum of 3 tests in the 6 months leading to the games. For medium risk, 2 tests. For low risk, minimum 1 test. So the expert group was issuing those testing recommendations, doing the follow-up, and indeed, as you say, it's a recommendation. We call it recommendation because the ITA has no power to force that. This is why we have a regulator, and the regulator today is WADA, and there is a compliance process. So the model is that if we see that those recommendations are not implemented, we pass this information to WADA, and WADA needs to open a compliance procedure against the federation or the country that has not respected them. So that's, I think I've answered all of them, or there's one missing.
Yeah, what is the system worth if the recommendation is there, but the athlete or the already did doping, or I don't know, and it's over now, you are too late, and they are through up to the games. What is the system worth if there are no immediate sanctions?
No, I think it's more solid than that. You have a national agency. If they don't do the job, there is still this athlete belongs to an international federation. And today, this is the huge difference from before the ITA, is that today there is an ITA that manages the program of these summer federations every day. So if we see a gap we would test this athlete. Now, we have achieved for the first time in Paris an extended testing jurisdiction for the ITA starting 4 months before the games. So ITA can test any athletes going to the games if we see gaps, and that's also another layer. And the third layer is that if we see, as you say, that an athlete has never been tested and arrives in Paris, we can test them. We have this ability. So what we have done is at the opening of the village, we have looked at the results of the pre-games program. We have seen the 10% not tested, but there are also some high risk that have been tested, but not enough. We take that into account, and then we design the testing plan in Paris according to that. And we see there were gaps. We did some target testing. We started the games 3 days ago. There are 2 positives. So the system is much better than it was. It's not perfect, but it's much better than it was in the past.
Thank you. Yes, Jörg.
Jörg Winterfeld, ARD. Ben, can you answer 2 questions, please? First question is, would you mind assessing the effect and what the Rodchenkov Act brings to the table in terms of cleaning up sports? And the second question is, would you mind answering, David Howman said in our documentary that you're just catching the dopers. Would you mind assessing that after the first positive cases in Paris?
I think on the first question, I feel that there are many countries in the world that maybe do not take the fight against doping seriously. And I think as an anti-doping community, we should welcome countries, law enforcement authorities, who want to be active in that field. So in that sense, I see some positives in a country like the US wanting to issue regulations to fight doping in sport. Where I feel that the Rodchenkov Act is maybe not the solution is that if you have every single country that decide to have extraterritorial jurisdiction in Germany and to say, I want to investigate cases in Germany, that undermines the jurisdiction of other countries. And the beautiful part of the World Anti-Doping Code is that we have one code applying uniformly in every single territory in the world. That means we have the same rule applying everywhere. If every country decides to have its own rule and to investigate cases in other countries, I think that may become anarchy in the system. So I think I like the idea of having one single code for the fight against doping. And I also like the idea in that sense to have public authorities feeling involved in it. It's just coming around the table and finding solutions. I'm not a partisan of every country doing whatever it wants. So that would be my very personal opinion. On the second aspects of David Howman, I don't think, I wouldn't call them dopey. There are still high-level athletes coming to the Olympic Games. We have had at the ITA last year only 485 anti-doping rule violations on international level athletes. Some have been Olympic medalists, some have been world champions, European champions. So we see that obviously it is perhaps more difficult to catch the best in that sense. I think that's a bit your comment, but I think it also shows that some positive cases happen in lower levels athletes, and that means that it's also an issue of education. Very often that those athletes may have not received the right education on substances or values, and so unfortunately we need to be humble in the fight against doping. The best of the best can dope, and the lower tier can also dope, and we have to apply our methods across the board.
Thank you. Yes, please. The man with the yellow t-shirt.
Hello, Ian Axon from Reuters. Michael, a couple of questions for you. If you could just expand upon some of the things that you said earlier. You said, I think that it's a very challenging time for the anti-doping community. I don't know if that was in reference to the Chinese swimming case or whether there were other matters that you were referring to as well. And on the enhanced games, which I think you also referenced, some people see it as a bit of a joke and can't be taken seriously at all, but do you think that is also a threat to the work that you do?
Thank you for these questions. Let me start in a way. I cannot understand the word enhanced games or whatever the terms are. I would call them the rich games. It's nothing more, nothing less. I don't think it's a danger to sport, because whatever those events or games are have nothing to do with sports. They obviously seem to be entertainment for some very, very rich people, not taking in any way into account about the health of the people participating. Of course, you will have performances that exceeds the athlete's performance under the WADA code, but on the other hand, this is not the performance of the athlete; it's the performance of some medical doctors, from chemists, from whoever. And I think in the end, those money games will not be a challenge to organized sport, because the other side is which responsible parent would put his kid, his children, his nephew, his niece, or whoever into a system like this. And this is my personal point of view. I mean, this brings us back 2,000 years, and like the Roman fun gladiator games, whatever they were. And yes, to answer your question, I don't think they have a future.
On the first one, what challenges do you see for the anti-doping community? What particular challenges do you see for the anti-doping community?
The challenge for the anti-doping community, and I come back to a very simple thing, is to provide the athletes, and still they are the center of our work, the centerpiece of our work, to provide them a level playing field, which is not yet there. I do understand the criticism, but tell me some other area in our life which works perfectly. I cannot tell you one. So why do we expect that in sports it's working 100%? There are flaws, we know that, but the only way forward is to keep on working on them.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hello, Friedrich Wolf, Top Sport Media in Germany. I have a general and a special question. The general question is how it's possible to trust anti-doping agencies in countries like Russia, China, and some other countries. And the special question is, I travel a lot to different countries, to international competitions, and I meet athletes that not know what a whereabout system is, and never was in a whereabout system. How is this possible?
So, Eva, would you start with the first one?
Yeah, I can. Well, to the second question, I can say, well, we have different layers of athletes, and just the high-risk athletes are in Adams, and they have whereabouts. They have their whereabouts to fill out. So that might be a question where in which layer the athlete is. I don't know, but as well I see the problem with education here. I mean, we focus very much on controls, but I think education is a very big issue, and I think education is not carried out everywhere in the world. And if athletes are not educated, of course they don't know about the whereabout system. And as said, it's the national anti-doping organizations that decide which athlete is on Adams and which athlete is not. So it can be an athlete who is not on Adams. As well, the first question, looking at trust, well, the most important thing is we're having a code that complies for the whole world. And we're having the regulator, which is WADA, and we're having the code, the standard for compliance. And it's WADA's task to make sure that the standard for compliance is executed, and that they're having the compliant tests everywhere, and that they make sure that everyone is complying with the code. So it's WADA's task to make sure that it's executed everywhere, and to make sure that the trust is getting back, as I said before.
Jérémy, would you say something as well? Because you here from Paris, you work with a lot of different NATO's.
No, I'm very surprised, but in a good way, to see how every anti-doping organization work with the same rule, same process, and we can understand immediately because every day we do the same job. In fact, it's very important to understand it's not not depending on the country, on the sport, everything. It's very important to understand that we have the same code, and I can send information to Eva for German athletes, for instance, and for French athletes, I can receive information for German anti-doping organization. It's very important to understand that. And about education, I think not education, but whereabouts. Yes, all the athletes are not required to send us whereabouts. Of course, we must select on a risk assessment. So it's not random selection. It's a really objective selection, and of course we have different level, and we must choose depending on the level. So yes, I think it's a good way to understand that it's not perfect, but it's better and better, and we can explain how it shows, for instance, for ARTP athletes.
Usually all athletes are in ADAMS, for example.
No. Like in France, we must choose. We have about, for instance, between 300 and 350 athletes, French athletes in the ARTP, for instance. It's just an example. So we must choose about, depending on resources, on time, and on disciplines.
Michael,
Sorry, how many?
In French, in the ARTP athletes, between 300 and 400, so an average of 350 on the RTP, and the TP, the other, it's about 300, so in total, yes, 600 people led every day by the AFLD, and many information from the National Federation about, for instance, competition abroad or trainings or many like that. So at the end, I think 1,000 people really in the heart of national anti-doping program in France.
400 in ADAMS.
In ADAMS, yes, in ADAMS between about 350. I think it's in the range.
Well, we have around 500 to 600 RTP athletes that are in ADAMS, and we have around 1,000 to 1,500, depending on if we're in an Olympic year or not, in the TP that are on ADAMS.
Michael, would you add something on the two questions here already were given, or from your perspective? Otherwise, you have to unmute your micro first. Thank you.
Excuse me. To your question in response, I'm coming back, and what I personally don't like too much that we are always talking about Russia, and we are talking about China, and for me this sometimes has the touch of being kind of political, whereas, and I don't want to mention any names, we have big sports nations, we have very successful sports nations, where the nations very developed ones that have through their sporting system the ability to be not under the WADA code for a very, very long time. So there are athletes who are performing on the highest international level, and they are not under the WADA code. So it's not just an issue about China and Russia. There are also other countries where we have a lot of work in front of us.
Thank you. Would you add something else?
I mean, perhaps also, I think it's important that the reason why the ITA was established is because there was a lack of trust in some countries. This was what led to the establishment of the ITA, and that there was a perception of some conflict of interest and lack of independence. And this is why today most of the international federations program are managed independently. So if we see some issues in countries that you mentioned, we can address them without necessarily working with local partners, and to do that completely independently. So the testing is done with outside people. in terms of RTP, the ITA of course has a much larger RTP than the numbers that have been presented because of the scope of our program in every country in the world. We must be at an RTP at 3,000 athletes that we manage. The ITA has collected 40,000 samples last year only, and 15,000 of them approximately were out of competition. That means through the provision of whereabouts. So if an athlete is an international level athlete going in the top competition, this athlete will be in Adams for sure and in an RTP and will be tested at least 3 times a year because this is the requirements under the WADA code.
Thank you. Maybe also from a point of athlete perspective, sometimes it's very hard to have the trust that we do not have the trust right now that every single NATO is working on the same level. We know actually that their athletes, they're not on the same level tested as we are, and sometimes it's very hard to deal with, but actually I'm very happy to hear today about your work, because also from my side I didn't knew it that detailed just before, and I think yes, maybe we have to regain the trust in our national anti-doping agencies, and somehow also to regain it back in the WADA, that they will make hopefully a reform, but they're already hopefully doing it, and to listen to their NATOs and their ITA. So, next question. The guy with the grey shirt, please. Thank you.
Hi, Claudio Catronio, Süddeutsche Zeitung. Yeah, we're talking a lot about the loss of trust, and you, Mrs. Bunthoff, you said you're talking about that also with the athletes a lot. So, but as we see, for example, in the US, the USADA is in conflict with WADA, is demanding for changes, and for example also for a serious investigation of that Chinese swimming case. So what are the concrete demands from your side, from the NATOs to WADA in this special case and in general?
Well, for us, we are in a group of different national anti-doping agencies to have a stronger voice and to make sure. I mean, we're having a lot of questions right now that haven't been answered so far, and as well from the athletes, we got lists of questions concerning the case, and we hope to get these questions. We hope that these questions are being answered. That's something we demand, and as well we look at the code, and we're having a code revision right now. And I think that's one thing Mr. Cotier said in his first report, that he will give some hints on how to change the code, looking at China as well. So I think that will be very interesting to have the full report at the end, to see what he will suggest, what can be changed in the code at the end, to make sure that, I mean, we're talking about a very complex case with a lot of athletes. We in Germany had a case in 2010. It's a long time ago, but we had a lot of athletes there as well. We handled the case differently than China this time. It wasn't it was a case where we had it was a UV blood case, so it's a different, not a contamination case. But still, for us, there are a lot of questions, especially on how to execute the case when looking at so many athletes. And we are very interested in getting the answers to all our questions and to see how to change the code in the future, and where that will lead to. And we hope to get our questions answered, and this is why we got together with a different group of national anti-doping organizations to be in contact with WADA to make sure that these questions are being asked, to make sure that the system is executed the same everywhere. But I think the question goes to Jérémy and the analysis, right?
Yes.
Yes, and I want to pick up 2 words Eva said and one Leah said. The key word for me, what Eva said, was that handling differently. And I think this is should be one of our goals, that once the full report is out, a new WADA code is coming up which will be approved in 2025. And I think this is something we should avoid with the new code, that the interpretation of a case could be handled differently. That makes it difficult. The goal should be that there is a standard where such a case, like the Chinese swimmer case, cannot be handled like in option 1, option 2, or option 3. No, that there is only one option to take, and this should be, of course, worldwide. And I'm coming back to what Leah said. With the new WADA code, and we are already working on it, a reform should take place that this is guaranteed.
Jérémy?
No, just I think in this matter the key word was transparency. We want to understand what it happened. We want to understand what was the process, and we want to understand what it's possible for next year to enhance in our rules. I think for NADOS it was the first step with the brief from Monsieur Cotier to have the first explanation about this case. But yes, as Michael said, when we deal every day with anti-doping case, we know that it's very complex. It's not so simple that it can be described by one side or the other side. So it's very important for the athletes, for the anti-doping community to understand, to have more explanation, to ask questions. Normal. It's I think it's part of the life in the anti-doping community. And then we have a process for the new code in 2027. If we must change rules, if we must precise rule, we will do it. I hope. I think it's normal. It's a normal process for a community, and it's that's the evidence where we are able to have a conversation, a normal conversation on this matter. It's normal. I think it's better than criticisms every day. I think it's important to have a constructive approach on this matter.
So one last question, actually. Yeah, hi, Marina asked as well. So, and you, if it's okay, because your team already mentioned it. Ja, okay. Dann, ja, dann mach du zuerst und dann Martin.
Well, maybe it's good if I ask before Hayo, because his broadcasting was once more the reason why we know all about this China case, and I was wondering whether you wanted to tell us what your demand is in concrete. I mean, it's once more that now this is out in the open, and you're part of this soup, even though you say that, you know, you have a lot of questions, but it seems like you had a lot of questions in, many years ago when Russia and that case came out. So I wonder whether you feel like there has to be a new way of communicating or a new way of being transparent to you as NADOS. Just guessing that you didn't know before the broadcast came out.
Michael, would you like to start?
Okay, so it's not the best position to be the first one on this, but okay. I think I'm in this business now as a CEO for 12 years, and I have learned in this area not to judge emotionally, not to follow any speculations. So I would suggest that this is my way. Wait for the report, for the full report of the independent investigator. And after that, analyze what's in the report, like you would do it in any other area of business or life also, and then draw the conclusion. And if it's necessary, and I'm totally open to this, and I might even agree with it, there must be changes in dealing with such cases, and this has the chances to put it into the new WADA code or into new standards. This is my take on this case.
Eva?
Well, I would say sometimes it needs a crisis and it needs discussion, and I think it as well needs fights to change the system. And I think it's good that we're having the broadcasting and that we have journalists bringing up different topics and that we can discuss them in the community to find solutions. And I think we're at the point again where we see that there are lacks in the system, and we have to try to find solutions to close these gaps, definitely. And this is why, I mean, we are not just demanding the answers for our questions, but we are trying to find solutions that these gaps are being closed, and yeah, demanding them as well. I mean, we can't write the code, of course. I mean, that's WADA's task. So we are the ones just bringing it forward and bringing in the ideas, and then we hope that that's being in there at the end.
Just a sentence to say, we must not be afraid to have a debate on this kind of case if we have a common goal, enhancing the global anti-doping program. If we want to have a better program after, I think we can have a debate to modify rules, to have new interpretation, to have a closer cooperation. But we must only if we are able to share this common goal.
Unfortunately, there are some people from ARD in that room, so sorry that we're asking different questions here. I have two questions. One is about China, one is about a totally different thing, but I would like to start with China. What I don't understand is you talk always about what conclusions can we draw about after this topic has arisen. But from my point of view, if you don't clear, not you, but people in the anti-doping community don't clear that case to a satisfactory, brings to a satisfactory result, you will continue to have those problems, because it's not about only the future, it's also about the past. It is simply very clear that there are so many discrepancies, and it's also clear that the mandate of Courtier is so limited. They have to answer only two questions, if WADA more or less has followed their own rules. This is the only question this guy has to answer. And even Mark Adams from the IOC has already said that they expect that the outcome of the report will be similar to the interim's report. So these questions have been asked not only by journalists, these questions about the credibility of all the explanations from the Chinese people have been asked for months now. And we had experienced 4 press conferences on Thursday here in Paris. It's an obvious, simple question. How it is possible that China has not even said who was the source of the alleged contamination? It is so obvious. And when we ask this question to WADA, they simply don't answer the question. If we ask them how it is possible that 3 months after alleged contamination in the kitchen, how can you find traces in a sink in the kitchen after COVID or in the course of COVID and every day using a hotel kitchen? How is that possible? And nobody answers this question. So, Eva, my question is, you said several times that we are waiting and hoping for sufficient answers. If these answers will not come, and to be honest, I don't believe that it will come ever, because there is no answer on that. So what is your consequence? What are you telling WADA if they don't obviously follow their own rules? And that belongs to this question. Upon request, we have decided, ARD has decided to share information yesterday, because legally on Thursday again said we didn't accept to share information. So that's what we did yesterday. We shared information with WADA, we shared information with ITA, we presented them original documents from Chinese athletes. So nobody knows if this is genuine. I agree with that. It can be fabricated, but for what reason it should be fabricated? It makes no sense. So my question to Ben and all the others here is, what will happen if finally people will say, okay, we cannot prove this, the case is too complex? It's not complex. It is not complex at all. The Chinese make it complex. But if you just stick on the basic facts and there's no answer, why, with a certain degree of probability, WADA can claim that we didn't have enough to challenge that? Although this is their own and biggest task to work for a credible anti-doping fight. This was my first question.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry for this.
First of all, I would like to give the possibility to answer. Eva?
So I should start with the first question, what will we do if we don't get the answers? Well, well, first of all, I think what you said, I mean, we all learn from the past, and we have done that in Germany quite a lot. We have learned a lot from the past. We had the GDR system to go very back in the past, but as well, we have learned from different cases we had, and we have always changed the system a bit. And I've already talked about the Erfurt case. I mean, you were involved with the broadcasting there as well, and afterwards we had a change in the system as well. And I think we can always learn from these sort of cases. We had different questions than you had, more in the execution of the code. And I think these questions will be answered during the WADA code reform. So I'm very much hoping for getting the answers, and we will ask again and again to get the answers for it. So I'm hoping for that we get the answers at the end. And I think the other questions were for the others.
It's more for Ben, I guess.
I mean, on our end, obviously, one decision was made, as you know, by Chinada in the past. There was a decision by WADA not to appeal. I think for us, obviously, we don't have the ability to go back in time in that sense. Now, having said that, ITA today has received the authority by World Aquatics to manage their anti-doping program, and we're in charge of individual anti-doping rule violation. We're not in charge of systemic doping or alleged doping. That would be a matter for WADA. So if ITA, it's very clear, if on our end we are found or we have in our possession evidence that allows us to bring forward a case of anti-doping rule violation against an individual athlete or even an athlete support personnel, we would go against that athlete or that person under the code and impose the necessary sanctions. So today we don't have that evidence. It could be that tomorrow we have it. If we have it tomorrow, we would have it.
You have it since yesterday.
I think you said yourself that you gave information that cannot be verified, so I don't think we have it. But
and that means you don't verify it, or people don't verify that information. That looks like, because if I am a police person, for example, I would try to verify something. This is a very normal procedure. If I have a suspicion, I go and try to find out. If I say it's not verified, so we can close a case, which WADA says, you can, the whole, from my point of view, the whole credibility of anti-doping is a declaration of bankruptcy, because you have to follow what is on. It happened in the Russian case, and I simply don't understand that people say it's not verified, we can close it. Excuse me, this is exactly the man. It's not ITA Batman. It's a more general thing. I don't understand that if there is something on the table and people say we have only to look into the future, what does it mean for clean athletes around the world? This message, I simply don't understand that.
There's a statute of limitation in the code that allows us to go in the past.
Yes,
so
I know.
We would be happy to go in the past. In fact, we go in the past very often. We have reanalyzed samples from London 2012 and found 70 positives that were declared negative. So we reallocated more than 50 medals. So we're happy to go in the past, in fact, to give credibility to the athletes. In that sense, every type of evidence that you or any of you would give us, it's our job to analyze it, to assess it, and if we can put the pieces of the puzzles together, we will be the first one to be happy to give athletes that trust. So I think you made us sign a document that doesn't allow me to disclose whatever type of information you gave us, so I will refrain from that. But please, any of you, should you have any information, any athlete that would have information that suggests an anti-doping rule violation in the case of China or in any other case, please feel free. We have an anonymous reporting platform called Reveal. Feel free as well. You can be anonymous. We have an anonymous WhatsApp, so you can even write us on WhatsApp, and it's our role to do that. If some of you then believe that we cannot do our job, or that you gave us reliable information that we didn't use, it is also you're free then to tell that ITA doesn't do the job. But so far, I think we have shown that we do no mercy to the fight against doping. We went after International Federation's president, we went after coaches, we went after Olympians, we went after anyone who has violated the code, and we will continue to do so. This is why we wake up in the morning, so we will continue that work, and I hope we will bring this comfort on this matter of China soon.
think we have one.
The first question. The second question is very short.
1.5 hours already.
Okay, I see that.
So,
Die werden wir jetzt noch durchgehen.
okay,
Schaffen wir jetzt.
so, but please make it short.
Yes, it's
Make it
very short. It's a totally different question.
Okay.
It's about TDSSA. I would like to understand, this is a technical document of sports with specific analysis. And my question is, how many, not how many tests, but how many analyses have been done on growth hormone and EPO in high risk or medium risk sports in the pre-period of the games, in, for example, football, athletic sprint, and swimming sprint, for example, because according to the TDSA, only 10% is a recommendation. That means 1 from 10 are not tested on that according to the recommendation. I don't say that this was the case. Maybe it was more. And my question is, how many tests have been really analyzed on hard substances?
I would just refer to an email if that's okay for you, if we send you the numbers later on, because I don't have them with me right now, and I think the ITA is doing a report on all the tests they did before, and I think they publish a report as well, and the TDSSA numbers are in there too, so we send you an email.
So, yes. You had it. No, I would like to close the press conference now, and from athlete points of view, maybe last small insight. I'm happy to hear about all of your work now. And yes, I guess we need a reform of the water, and I'm really hoping for that it works out, and with more power from NATOs, and also with more power from athletes. That's my wish for. Thank you all for coming.
Jetzt angeschlossen, ja. Ich habe zwischendurch ein bisschen was raus. Schön, ne? Willst du denn?